Morning, hello, welcome to Tuesday. I enjoyed the chat with Mick Cullen from Dad Matters yesterday. Really important for us men and us dads to talk about mental health in an open, non-stigmatised way, without judgment. I think gradually we're getting there, us men and us humans in general. We're getting there with mental health, and one day I hope it will be as normal to talk about that as it is to talk about our physical health. How are you doing today? Oh, got a bit of a cold, got a bit of a pain in my back, got a bit of depression, feeling a bit anxious. That'll be good, one of these days. So, I've had a couple of people who have volunteered to do something on the Hive on Wednesdays. Thank you to those people. Mindful yoga has now ended, so we're looking for either a regular slot, someone to take over a regular slot on Wednesday, or someone just to offer a one-off or a two-off. Whatever you've got that you feel the Hive could benefit from. If you want to do a demonstration of some kind of wellbeing thing, or host a chat, or talk about something, you could have a chat show. Whatever you want to do. Please just message me, let me know if you can offer something, that would be great. The more the merrier, the more we can get people involved, and it isn't just me talking all the time. I think that will bring more of a community feel and offer lots of different things to this growing community. We're approaching 300 people now in the Hive, which is lovely. I think the more of us that can be active in sharing something of our own knowledge and experience, the better. Over the stile. Okay, so today, a couple of things to talk about. One is around the whole COVID situation. And guess what? I've listened to a podcast. I've got some thoughts around distractions and denial and depression and anxiety, facing the soul, all the different reactions that people are having to the lockdown, and the long-term impacts of COVID, which I think are beginning to emerge now, of just how long and how impactful this is going to be on the human race. But first, just wanted to reflect on my own well-being. And I've noticed over the past few years that I have these kind of well-being yo-yo experiences where I look after myself really well for a while, and then things slide. And it is this kind of repetitive cycle, a bit like I was talking about the other week, where we do the well-being checkup, holistic well-being, and think how are you looking after your mind, your emotions, your body, how you speak to yourself, how you treat others, how you eat, how you exercise, all that type of stuff. And for me, I used to have, I still have these cycles of looking after myself really well, and then things start to slide, and it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. And I take a dip. And what used to happen would be that something would slide. I'd either start going to bed late, or my eating wouldn't be very healthy, or I'd be procrastinating over my work. Self-sabotaging behaviours would creep in, and they'd all stack up on top of each other and lead to negative well-being. And in the past that would lead to depression. I would sink into depression, feeling low self-esteem, low confidence. I think, oh, why am I doing all this stuff to myself? And the tiredness would get on top of me, and the poor eating habits and not enough exercise, not enough social contact would all stack up until the alarm bells were really ringing and I'd have to do something to drag myself out of it, which was quite tough sometimes, and sometimes those cycles would last quite a long time. And what I've noticed more recently is that I still have these yo-yos of well-being. I'm curious whether you experience this as well. I was talking to someone the other day, a friend of mine who is very similar to myself. So what I've noticed these days is I still have the yo-yos, but they're less extreme than they used to be, and I notice them sooner and I catch them sooner. So I'll notice that I've started going to bed late again, or I've started overeating, or I've started procrastinating over my work. And instead of beating myself up about it and continuing the vicious cycle of negative behaviours, I turn it into what you might call a virtuous cycle. So at any point when I recognise, oh, there's a red flag there, what I can do is say, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up for this. I'm just going to say, okay, so this is happening. There's a reason for it. There's a need beneath the behaviour. And just honour it. Notice it with curiosity and self-compassion. And from there, start to do the positive behaviours sooner, which stops me going around and down into the negative spiral. So for me it's things like forcing myself to go out for a run even though I don't feel like it. That's really one of the really crucial things I do to maintain positive mental health. Or urge surfing, which I've spoken about before. So for me, one of my self-destructive behaviours is eating too much. You might not think it to look at me, I'm stick thin. But I have got a bit of a belly. It's bigger than it used to be anyway. So urge surfing. If I think I'm not hungry but I'm wanting food to comfort myself, surf that urge for a minute and then another minute, and by the time you've got up to 10 minutes the urge will almost invariably be gone, because you're not hungry, you're just wanting something else. This is me talking, I'm not hungry, I'm wanting something else. This is distracting. But I'm going up high today. So catching stuff, doing some reparatory positive things, positive behaviours. Good morning, Lara. And Fiona. Pulls me out of the negative spiral, and doing so with compassion rather than beating myself up and continuing that negativity. So I'm just noticing that it's interesting to me, and it feels like progress. It feels like, yes, there's always going to be a yo-yo, not always. The yo-yo is still here. Don't know how long it's going to stay for, but I've got some strategies to pull myself out of the yo-yoing. So if I can do it, maybe you can too, if indeed you have a yo-yo. I'd be interested to hear if you have or not. So that's thing number 1 on the agenda for today's walk and talk in the Pathlight Thrive Hive. Agenda item number 2 is around this whole long-term effect of the pandemic, which for me I feel is just becoming, people are just becoming conscious of. that it isn't anything that's just going to last a few months. I said a while ago to a couple of friends that I think people will start to think of the pandemic in terms of something the scale of World War II. So we now talk about pre-war and post-war because it was a very different world. So many things changed after World War II. The NHS, fear around dictatorships and how we do international relations and all that type of stuff. So much changed. And I think, oops, barbed wire on the bum. I think the same is going to happen with this pandemic. I think in the future people will talk about the pre-pandemic world and the post-pandemic world. Pre-COVID and post-COVID. Because life now looks very different to how it looked 4 months ago for many of us. And as I say, I don't think this is just going to be something that lasts a few months. I think in a year's time, in 2 years' time, possibly even 5, 10, 20 years' time, things will still be very different. Whether that's on a practical level, around how we operate in the world, or on a spiritual, emotional, relational level of how we see the world, what our priorities are, how we interact with each other, what we take for granted, and what we actually really value. So, you know, when people drive really fast, we take a glance at the driver, and more than that, it's a male. Maybe it's the testosterone. Slow down, people. So, I think before the pandemic, this might sound a bit judgy, but I hope you don't feel judged by this. I feel that before the pandemic, many people were sleepwalking in their lives. They were taking stuff for granted, not really thinking about their lives. Just get up, go to work, go to the pub, go shopping, go to the cinema, go to a restaurant, go to bed, repeat. And I'm not saying there's anything particularly wrong with that way of being, but taking their lives for granted every day, maybe not enjoying it, maybe not so much of society, Western society, is built on distraction. So if you think about all of the things that have closed down since the pandemic, cinemas, theatres, sports, restaurants, cafes, shops, all of that stuff isn't actually necessary. It's all a distraction. Yeah, it's entertaining. Going to the cinema is entertaining. Watching a football match might entertain you. But actually, it's all a distraction. And most of that has been taken away by lockdown. And that's left a big hole for a lot of people. A big hole. And how we've responded to that hole perhaps holds a clue for us about our own psyches and how we relate to the world and what's important to us. So, I suppose, let me just pause for a minute here. Sorry, I've lost my thread a little. All the distractions have gone temporarily, and the post-COVID world, a lot of that stuff will start to come back. It is starting to come back now as lockdown eases. I think they're saying that cinemas are going to reopen, galleries are going to reopen next month. So some people might be going, yay, we can go to the cinema again, we can start going to restaurants and pubs and all that. And if that's what you want to do, that's okay. But I would invite you just to have a look at what your experience has been without all of those distractions. Has it been difficult? If so, in what way has it been difficult for you? Human interaction, as Mick was saying last night, he was missing seeing his friends in the pub because we are social beings. We need that social connection, and yeah, Mick's been doing quizzes for his neighbours and stuff, and you can get some connection through Zoom. It's not the same as being face to face, but we need to have that kind of connection. But lots of the other stuff, which is going shopping for stuff that we don't actually need, going to jobs that we don't actually enjoy or have a purpose, going to the bingo, whatever it is, feeding ourselves in fancy restaurants. It's all very pleasant, but it's all distractions really. So what has been your experience of being without those things? And how are you feeling now that they're starting to come back? And with so many human experiences, I feel that the fight, flight, freeze response is important. It seems to play into so many aspects of human existence. So this reptilian part of our brain, the oldest part of our brain, the amygdala, really plays in when we are under threat, when our way of life is under threat, when we sense danger. And the pandemic is danger. It's strange, that so many things we took for granted, going shopping, going to the cinema, going to a restaurant, shaking hands, hugging, all of that now has become a danger. It's become a threat to our actual existence. Every human being that we see on the street or in Tesco is a loaded gun. They could give us a disease which might kill us, or we might pass on unknowingly to someone else and kill one of our loved ones. So it's a very strange situation. And pre-COVID, there was risks in everything we do. Crossing the road, there's a risk. Going for a drive, there's a risk. Playing football, there's a risk to our well-being. But we kind of take it all for granted, and we just get on with it. But now, the risk is intensified. It's in our faces every moment of every day, and that must lead to a lot of anxiety. I'm going to have a sit down. So, we can't go to gigs anymore. Going to a gig could lead to catching COVID. So many distractions are closed. The only thing we're left is Netflix. And there's some good stuff on Netflix, but again, it's a distraction. And we're doing it in our little families, in our bubbles, rather than getting out into the world. So fight, flight, freeze comes in, and I suppose the fight element is for those people who are in denial. I see so many people, especially young people, out and about in groups, not distancing at all, just carrying on as if everything's normal and they're bulletproof, and they don't have a responsibility to reduce the spread of infection. So I suppose those kind of people are reacting from a place of denial around the severity of this situation, and that denial puts other people in greater danger and can enhance anxiety for everybody else. And the other responses, so that's the fight response, I suppose. The freeze response could be where people are just isolating, they're refusing to go out, possibly even becoming agoraphobic through fear of contracting this disease, which is so small we can't see it. It's very hard to get a handle on this thing that is it's so small, in fact it's invisible, but it's there, it's all around us, and we don't exactly know where it is. So we might freeze, we might stay indoors and cut off all contact from everyone else and stop doing anything outside our own four walls. And that's understandable as well as a reaction, but that can lead to isolation, depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies, those negative spirals I talked about at the beginning, because we need human interaction, and without it we're missing a huge part of human existence. So that's the fight and the freeze, and then the flight, I suppose, is getting out into the world but being incredibly anxious all the time. And I know several people like this who are really struggling every time they go out with intense anxiety, even panic attacks, going to the supermarket because other people are not acting the way they should be, or even if they are, there's still that anxiety that's constantly there around, are these humans loaded guns? Are they going to catch? Am I going to catch something off them? So it's very, very difficult to sit with these two opposites of what we need, that human interaction that we need, and keeping safe. It's very hard. Morning. In fact, it's almost impossible. It's like Hobson's Choice, if you're familiar with that play. And there's a parallel here, I think, with what the UK government's doing and with what all governments are doing, because they need people to be safe. They don't want the NHS to be overwhelmed. They don't want tens of thousands of people dying, although that's what's happening. But also they need the economy to work, because if they don't, the whole thing around capitalism is going to collapse. The whole tenet of capitalism is for people to spend and keep buying stuff that they don't actually need. So all of the stuff that's closed down, those distractions I talked about, cinemas, restaurants, shops, cafes, it's all very nice, but they're just distractions. And with them all closed down, the economy is not grinding to a halt, but it's creaking. So the government wants us to get back out there and open up all these things, and they're looking at reducing the 2 metre rule to 1 metre so that those businesses can survive. And yeah, totally have sympathy for all the business owners who are struggling. I am one of those people. But it's very, very difficult to hold those two things at the same time. The safety and the getting out there and doing stuff, whether that is playing football, going to the cinema, going to a restaurant, meeting up with friends. It's very hard to do all these things whilst staying safe. And it's like a double bind. How do you do it? How do you cope with the anxiety? And how do you overcome the fear of getting ill or dying or spreading the disease to someone else without knowing it, whilst also maintaining your mental health and maintaining some equilibrium and getting some money? It's very, very hard. It's a difficult situation. But again, I've said it so many times, it's an opportunity to reevaluate what's important. And for those who perhaps saw themselves as sleepwalking before all this happened, doing the get up, go to work, consume, go to the pub, go to the restaurant, go to the cinema, distract, it's an opportunity to see what's important and to go inside as well. And inside, meeting the soul can be very challenging. There can be some dark stuff in there. People don't like meeting their souls sometimes. That's why we distract ourselves, I suggest. That's one of the main reasons we do all the stuff like go to the cinema, get some escapism. It's because if there was nothing, if we were just sat in a darkened room, such as a prisoner in isolation in a prison, they can experience psychosis. They can have intense inward journeys. They used to say people would go mad. I'm not really sure I like that phrase, but going inwards and lacking that human connection, sitting with our soul, the darkness within us, which we like to deny and distract from, can be very difficult. And I think what's happening for many people now with the depression, anxiety, isolation, difficult feelings, some of that is sitting with the soul, because there are few opportunities for distraction, much limited opportunities for interacting with others, and we're spending a lot of time with ourselves, and we're getting to know ourselves better, and maybe we don't like some of the stuff we see. Carl Jung calls it the shadow. It's a difficult place to go, but there is gold in there if we can sit with it. So, yeah, this podcast I listened to this morning, they said even kings who had all of the power and all of the wealth in medieval times, they had court jesters. Why did they have court jesters? To relieve the pressure, to take them away from the realities of their responsibilities and sitting with themselves. They needed some silliness, some distraction, and maybe that's why we've got cinema and Netflix and cafes and all that stuff. And as it reopens, maybe just have a little, I invite you to have a little investigate around, do I want to return to all of the things I used to do? Yeah, many of them are very pleasant, and many of them involve seeing other people and connecting and doing fun stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're doing that at the exclusion of finding out what's really important, going inwards, looking at our soul, then maybe we are just sticking a sticking plaster on a wound, rather than having a look at that wound and getting to know ourselves and re-evaluating what's important in our lives. Feels a bit preachy, this. I'm sorry if it's coming across as preachy. I'm trying to offer it as again, an opportunity. It's a very, very difficult situation for everyone, and I don't want to belittle that or make it sound like business owners should not reopen and people shouldn't go back to cafes and cinemas. There's nothing wrong with all of that stuff, nothing wrong with it. But if that's all we do, and when we get a bit uncomfortable thinking, oh, I'm feeling some feelings here, I'm looking at what's going on inside of me, I'm seeing the dark side of myself. If we then head to food, head to cinema, head to Netflix, head to bingo or golf or football all of the time, then maybe we're not doing ourselves any favours. So, food for thought, if you'll excuse the pun. Tuesday today, it is Man Tuesday. If you're a man, you want to talk about any of this stuff, you can argue with me if you want, please do. Or you can just talk about your mental health or your relationships, whatever you want to talk about. That's Man Tuesday, 6 o'clock on Zoom. Come along. It's a lovely, friendly, non-judgmental community. We don't argue, actually, we just listen to each other. And it's really lovely. So come along if you're a man. And like I said at the beginning, if you are happy to offer something to us on a Wednesday, our mindful yoga has now finished, so we have a day where we're not doing anything, and that can't be allowed. We need distraction every day. Hopefully it's not a distraction what you get here. Hopefully it's more juicy stuff. But if you can offer something on a Wednesday, then do please message me, whether it's just a one-off, you want to present something, share some holistic practices that you do, hold a conversation, talk about spirituality, teach us a new skill, open up some kind of platform for doing something that will benefit the hive, please send me a message, and you can do it for as long as you want, a one-off, or until the end of time. Let me know. That would be much appreciated. And two other things. If you want to come on a mental health first aid course next month, then you need to book and pay by the 1st of July, please. So have a look on the Hive or visit pathlight.org.uk/courses to book yourself onto that very wonderful course online. And if you are finding benefit from all of this gubbins, then please, gubbins is one of my favourite words, spatula's good too, then please buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/thrivehive. You can drop us £3 or you can become a member for £7 a month, and that would be much appreciated to keep this thing sustainable. Emma says, thanks for this. Perfect explanation for how I feel inside right now. Much appreciated. I'm glad it resonated with you, Emma. It's good to get the feedback. I'm glad it didn't come across as too preachy to at least one person. If I've helped one person, I've done a good job. So, yeah, that's lovely. Got a warm feeling inside now. Thank you, folks, and enjoy your Tuesday. I hope the wind hasn't influence the quality of this broadcast. Take care, see you soon, bye.